Morning, everybody. It is 8:10 a.m. It is June 11th. Welcome to my channel. Just some news came out just a couple minutes ago. Trump saying that China trade deal is done. In the last hour, we kind of got like a doji candle going on there. It's interesting that that didn't push markets too much because we're still anticipating CPI at 8:30. So, yeah, like I said, it's just a doji candle on the hourly chart right now. Now, market broke out a 2-day balance yesterday. 2-day balance. Not a monster move, but it did break out. And we just have to see. This market has a lot of cross currents, a lot of uncertainty. That's why this move has not been impressive at all. But we still keep grinding higher, right? So, why don't we get right into it? Welcome to my channel. My name is Steven Gonzalez. I use market profile, volume profile to find structure in the markets, along with supply and demand, gamma exposure levels, the most traded price of the year, the month, the week, and the previous day. That is my edge. That's the way I use data and construct data to come up with plans every day. All right. Now I also use anchored VWAPs. Okay, anchored VWAPs, and I use my market internals. Okay, I use my market internals. They give me what the market is capable of, or like yesterday, right? It gives me the edge not to do anything, right? Your edge is also to put a trade on, but your edge is also when not to do anything and know your edge is the market is not going to give you the setup that you like. So yesterday, I actually did have an alert set on the when we broke yesterday's overnight highs. Okay, I call them overnight highs. Other people call them pre-market. So I was live and I was telling my when I was in the stream, I said 97% of all sessions hit the overnight high or overnight low. And at that point, when I said that, we were not close to the overnight highs. And guess what we did? We did tag both of them in the NASDAQ and the ES. And that, when you tag that, and I actually had an alert, and I said, I'm going to put an alert, I'm going to go for a walk. I would say I'm in my walk for 10 minutes. I got an alert on my phone or my watch, and I saw that we hit the overnight highs. That right there caused a nice little sell-off, and I wasn't there to capitalize. But it wasn't an easy setup, so I'm not that hard fixed about it. And then I'll show you what else the next resistance point we hit. Okay, the next resistance point we hit. Yesterday was just not an easy day. Okay, that's why I just held off. I knew the moves would not be smooth. Okay, and yesterday we had a liquidation break. I'll explain what that means later. A liquidation break where the market was doing nothing, and out of nowhere, it sold off. Okay, when it sold off and it comes out of nowhere, right, and it recovers, that's a liquidation break. What liquidation breaks do is remove sellers from the market. This helped us move higher. It strengthens the market. Okay, because sellers who were short covered, they're out now. They're gone. And now new buyers take over, and now those sellers that were short are out of the market. And that which would help us propel higher. Okay? Now, hopefully, if you're new to the channel, subscribe, set that alert. I do this every morning. Give you the market story, the market news, the economic calendar, the leaders and the laggards, daily charts, and a whole bunch of other stuff along with long and short trade scenarios using the ES and the NASDAQ futures. Okay, I give you the little market internals recap. I do a lot of extra stuff. All right, so hopefully you guys can sit back, have a cup of coffee, have a cup of water, whatever, drive, put me on when you're in the shower. I give you the lowdown of the markets. You don't need to go anywhere else. And if you're not a trader, listen to the beginning of my stream. It's not complicated. It's just basically what's going on in the markets. Yes, when I get a little deeper, it gets a little more TA, it gets a little more advanced. I understand. but the beginning will give you what's going on in the markets. Okay. All right. Now let's get into this. All right. Let's get right into see what's moving futures today. Now they should be muted because we got CPI, right? And we're going to look at that live together. Okay. We'll look at that live together. Now crude's jumping off right now. All right. Now why are they jumping off? Because Trump just said the U.S. and China made a trade deal. Okay. China is the largest crude importer. That's why it's taken off. So right now, that's why that is moving. 10-year yields up. Now, if you ever look at 10-year yield and crude, they kind of go together. And crude kind of acts as a leading in that correlation. Okay. Gold up 0.36, Ethereum up 0.29. The dollar's flat basically. Nasdaq you could see is down slightly. And if you hear those alarms going off, those are large orders hitting the tape on the Nasdaq, crude, or the ES. Okay. Russell down 0.16, ES down 0.17, the Dow's down 0.24, Bitcoin's down 0.25, 30-year bonds being sold down 0.31, silver is down 0.82. Okay, kind of muted. Everything's kind of muted except crude. Okay, because the China and U.S. come to a deal. All right, moving on to the Mag 7 Plus. Now you all heard about the Elon Musk and Trump feud, right? Well, this thing's been taken off like a rocket ship, Tesla, after that sell-off. Okay, Elon Musk actually admitted that he went overboard with the text. He did post something the other day about robo-taxis. Remember, they're going to lead with the autonomous vehicles. Okay, in the robo-taxis. They are up 2.27%. I think they hit around 270 something at the lows of this down move. Now they're up 333. They're up 2.29%. Okay, not much leaders other than that because we're waiting for CPI. Who's the bottom of this list really? Meta down 0.20, Netflix down 0.33, GE down 0.37, and Broadcom down 0.42. Now GE, if you look at a chart of GE, it's friggin' been parabolic. Okay, straight up like a friggin' rocket ship. Finally getting some pullback. People are probably taking some profits. Okay. Now, top sectors. Do I have anything for you? Not really. So I'm going to move on to sectors, the guts of the market. Okay. You can see energy. Energy's moving. Obviously, crude up 0.46, followed by discretion at your Tesla. Now, who's lagging here? We got financials, not really that much. Technology down 0.20, and basic materials is down 0.31. Okay. Like I said, this hourly candle is a doji. That U.S.-China trade deal, I don't know if the market's getting numb to it. Okay, and also there was earlier that Trump says that he can do tariffs, so that's kind of negative. Remember, this friggin' market is all about headline risk, and it's so sensitive to news, and we really don't know what's happening. Yes, there's a trade deal that just possibly got reached, right? So, moving on, right? We got about 12 minutes to news drops. Okay, let's get right over to, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go right into the internals recap real quick. Give me a second here. Market internals recap. Here we go. All right, so this is yesterday. Really didn't have any weakness, really. The market cap kept growing. Dipped a little bit. That's what that, I'm sorry, when it hit the overnight highs, that's when it dipped. And then we just kind of had strength. Okay, we kind of had strength. You can see the equal weight was weak off the bat. It was a disconnect. There was a divergence. Okay, overall market was weaker than the market cap. And I also pointed out when I was live in my Discord, by the way. So that's Confluence Trading. Go to my own YouTube homepage if you want to join. What I was saying was at the time in the morning, okay, Nasdaq was just bumping up against its VPOC and just chilling there. Why was that happening? Right? I showed in my channel, Nvidia was consolidating in a range from the previous day. Microsoft was selling off, and Apple was going higher. All three of those stocks were not connected. Hence why the Nasdaq especially was just in no man's land. It just didn't know what to do. You have all those forces fighting each other. You're not going to have smooth moves in the market. It's going to be very choppy, wicky. So that's why this happened. Okay. You can see at the end of the day, the industrials was the only laggard. Okay. But you had the top five sectors green. Top five sectors green. Okay. That is your market internals recap. Let's get over to the news economic calendar and we'll just check out here. All right. 30-year mortgage came out. It went up 0.1, 0.01. All right. Now, big numbers coming out. Core inflation year over year, we're expecting 2.9. We're expecting a 0.1 raise. Okay. Remember that excludes food and energy. Now, the year over year headline number, we're expecting 2.5 previous. So we're expecting them to go up. Maybe this is because of the tariffs. I don't know, but that's what they're expecting. Okay, so we will be live on that in about 9 minutes, a little less than 9 minutes, okay? Moving on to some news. Let's see if there's any stock news first. If there is, we'll go over it. Here we go. All right, let's see. Tesla stock rose 2.1 after CEO Elon Musk said that he regretted some social. That's what I talked about. He made last week. That's crazy that it just goes up because of that. Victoria's Secret stock rose 0.4 after their lingerie retailer reaffirmed its full-year sales guidance. Chewy stock fell 7.5 after the online pets product reported net sales. Novavax stock rose 0.4 after the drug maker said its experimental COVID-19 influenza combination and standalone influenza vaccine showed strong immune responses. Microsoft stock fell 0.2 despite Citi analysts initiating a positive catalyst watch on the software giant in notes to clients. Okay, telling investors that Street Azure estimates are too low. Now, I saw something yesterday that Starbucks and somebody else is going to use Azure's AI, and I forget the reason. Well, maybe we'll get into that later. Quantum computing companies like Quantum Computing, QUBT, IonQ, blah, 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 all these have climbed strongly after NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang reiterated the quantum technology is at its inflection point. Okay? All right, moving on to more news. All right, U.S.-China trade reach deal to ease export curbs, keep tariff truce alive. All right, here's Tesla's public robotaxi ride set for tentative June 22nd start. All right, we just talked about Jensen Huang, mentioned CEO's quantum computing. Now, I have a list here for IonQ. That is up 4.05% pre-market. Okay, based on what that said. Okay, I was gonna enter that stock, buy some in the 20s when it dipped. Obviously, that's a regret. Let's move on. If there's anything else. Eli Lilly had a monster day yesterday. So let's see. In other news, talks with Trump administration about lowering U.S. drug prices have so far not provided clarity on when and how reduced prices will be implemented. Top executives from Eli Lilly and Merck said at an industry conference on Tuesday. Lilly's chief financial officer, Lucas Montaris, said that it was not clear when a resolution on the price reform would be achieved. So I don't really, I had to look at it. Eli Lilly had a monster day yesterday. All right. Now you got to remember, the healthcare sector has been beaten down. And I was looking to do some options play in Eli Lilly, and I just missed it. Okay. General Motors, the automaker, said on Tuesday it's planning to invest about $4 billion over the next 2 years at 3 U.S. facilities: Michigan, Kansas, and Tennessee. Here's what I was talking about. Maybe they'll have that in here about Starbucks. Starbucks has received a lot of interest in the sale of a stake in its China business. Its chief executive told Financial Times in an interview on the U.S. No, that's not what I was looking for. All right. We talked about the NVIDIA quantum computing. All right. Qualcomm, the U.S. chipmaker, has launched an artificial intelligence research and development center in Vietnam. The company said its research will focus on advancing generative and agentic AI solutions across smartphones, personal computers, XR, extended reality, automotive, and I don't know what that is, LOT or IoT applications in a said statement. All right. I am a proud owner of some Qualcomm, so I'm happy with that's been doing. All right. Moving on. I remember CPI we have in about 5 minutes now. The juice. Here's our juice. Okay. Some headlines. Our deal with China done, subject to X's approval. Trump, relationship is excellent. Trump, we are getting 55% tariffs. China is getting 10. All right. Now it's just a doji candle. We're waiting for CPI. Okay. And then he says lower. A Trump federal appeals court has just ruled that United States can use tariffs, which wouldn't be great. Okay. Now that's our news. Okay. Don't need to really get in breath charts. We did that yesterday. We did that yesterday. All right. Now, what we'll do here, we'll look at dailies. Dailies is not going to tell us a whole lot because we know we broke out of that 2-day balance. So let's do this here. So 2-day balance, let's just zoom in here to the thing here. 2-day balance here, we broke out. So it took out these last 2 days. You're on that channel. You kind of closed above it. Right here. Right now we're at 602.30, 602.30. That would be right around here. Upper third of this session. All right, let's look at futures. Let's look at futures real quick. Here's our futures inside the prior day, right here. Price action. Okay, there's last week's highs. There's last month's highs. So you're holding above last week's highs in futures. Okay. Now, moving on to Qs. Qs still in this channel. Okay. There's last week's highs. We closed above it. Right? This channel is getting tight, right? So we broke out of a 2-day balance here as well. Where are we now? 533.90, 533.90. We are right there, close to the close of yesterday. All right, close to the close. Let's look at the futures here. Just get a nice little view of what's going on. Here you go, holding last week's highs in futures. Last month's highs was the lows in the overnight session. Okay, I think we have time to get to the triple headed monster. This will change. This will definitely change. Bond market's been squirrely, just like the dollar's been bottoming out. See, you're just in a range here. It's going to decide what it's going to do. Yields are rising, right? Little rise here. You had a nice push down and then a push back up, but they just don't know what they want to do. All right, let's look at that dollar. That dollar's been bottoming out. Look at that, just bottoming here in the range. Really needs to get its footing. Let's look at our VIX. Remember, VIX is 30 days out. 30 days out. We've just been ranging, but we're kind of trending lower. Not kind of, we are. 16.97 VIX, still 17 VIX. Really, let's see what the CPI number does to this VIX. All right. That's our dailies, and that's our triple-headed monster. Let's move over to the hourly charts, and we'll stay there for the drop of news. Here's our hourly charts here. Let's get into those. Okay. I'll point out some things. Let me get my marker out here. All right. Look at this channel, right? Or the ascending wedge. A lot of support, right? So we have a lot of support. We haven't hit the bottom of it, but look at the top. All those touches, right? All those touches. And guess where we came yesterday? Touch. And then what did we do? We pulled back, right? Right to the last week's highs. That's right here. Held the most traded price of yesterday. That's that purple box. And here's our doji candle. This is all when Trump said we had reached a deal. But this is right now just a doji waiting for CPI that drops in 1 minute. Okay, so if I drop this down, let's just drop it down. See high volume node up there. You see some supply, overhead supply up there. Okay. Just have to see. See, we hit resistance again right at these hourly candles. So we're basically in this little range. Hourly support, hourly resistance, right? Supply zone, all right, inside this channel, this ascending wedge. All right, news is going to drop any second. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You can really see the movement of these candles here. This is your ES. Okay, let's see what transpires. That is going to drop. We'll look at the price action first, then we'll go to the actual data. It's going to drop now. Boom. Whoa, 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 whoa. Look at that move. Look at those orders slamming in here. All right. You broke that ascending wedge to the upside. Let's see if it holds. Now, let's see what transpired with the data here. All right, let's look at the numbers here. So, let's go to core inflation. That's the Fed's preferred. Uh-huh. All right, so we expected 2.9 and came in zero point 0.1 lower than expected, but it came in the same as the last reading. Kind of stayed the same. All right, it came in lower than expected, but same as the last time. Now, headline number expected 2.5. They expected a zero point 0.2 raise, and you got zero point 0.1 lower, but it's still zero point 0.1 higher than previous. I believe right now, even though the market is telling us they're loving it, that this is not. I mean, the market needed something. Maybe this is it, but being honest with you, those numbers don't support anything crazy. But that doesn't matter what I'm saying. It really doesn't. Because the market's going to do what it does. And it doesn't matter about these numbers are fake, the CPI is wrong, the inflation should be much higher. Like you listen to a lot of people who talk about the formulas that they use these, they're not really accurate and all that. That does not matter. I used to always try to be smarter and be like, if you look inside those employment numbers, they're all doctored. That doesn't matter. The market trades on these fake numbers. They're fake or not, does not matter. That's the market. It's going to respond. The algos are going to respond to these levels. I'm going to take the supply zone now because that's been taken out. Okay, this is a negative epoch that it's hitting right now. That's an untested most traded price of a day. Okay, let's see if this really is something. Okay, now what I'm going to do while I have you guys here is what I like to call that is the scene of the crime. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw an anchored VWAP on the CPI release. I'm going to put right on this candle an anchored VWAP. You don't see it now because it's on this candle. All right, so as the day goes by, there will be an anchored VWAP anchored to this candle. And what that's going to tell me is from this candle, buyers are in control or sellers take over, or tells me if we take out the VWAP, oh boy, people who bought the CPI are now underwater. That's why I use anchored VWAPs, okay? So I love that because it's a concrete way to be like the average buyer is underwater. That's a very important piece of knowledge, okay? Now, right while we're here, I know there's going to be about a, let's see here. Would it be a 6 hour? Let's see. Maybe. I'm going to change this to a 6 hour chart. I'm just going to put my demand. I'm going to fix this demand zone while everybody's here just so it can go into my analysis later. Okay. This is a 6 hour chart now. So now we got a 6 hour demand zone here. So I'm going to doctor this one. Boop, boop. So anything back in there, I'm going to set an alert now. I just like to set alerts. We'll go with 6 hour. Demand zone, demand, and then I number them. So this is the 15th one I have. It's also a little indicator for myself. If we get a little frothy, those demands keep going higher and higher. And then I have a preset that just tells me when demand gets hit, and this is the ES. Okay, so that's a demand zone. Now, I'll show you one thing here. If I really zoom out on this chart, right, and we take it down, if you look, let me take this down more. It's just crazy how this market's been moving because all these high volume nodes, right? Look at them. That's how much the market's just been hitting these big high volume nodes. Okay. Now look at this one. That's from the past. You look to the left, right? The job of the market is you go from high volume node to high volume node. So just all you got to do with volume profile. Now this is a composite volume profile. You got the year to date in green. You got a year ago in white. This is the next high volume node. Okay, I'm going to give you that price right now. That price is 61.38. So if we can hold above this level, we should revisit 61.38, and that will be the next wall. Okay. If we go to the left and we just look at why that spike is there, right? Let's really line up the spike with the price action. The spike, right? Look at all this traffic. That is, you don't cut through that like a hot knife through butter. You just don't do it. We should pause here. We should pause there, okay? Just wanted to show you guys that. All right, I'm going to make this chart back to an hourly, and we will continue to the NASDAQ hourly chart. Okay? The market's liking this right now. Okay? Market's liking this. Let's go to the NASDAQ. Let's check out that NQ. Okay? Market's liking it. You busted out of that ascending wedge. You busted out of this supply zone. Okay, so now we get rid of this supply. We get rid of that supply. And we know we're going to have like a 6-hour supply demand zone just like we did earlier. So NASDAQ might take a little longer because there's so much tick data in NASDAQ. And then right from here, we'll go right into our NASDAQ. Wait till that loads the, there we go. And I'm just going to sweeten up this demand zone here and expand it to be the 6-hour. The more time spent in a demand zone, the more powerful. Okay, so we'll do the same thing I did earlier. We'll make this a 6-hour demand zone. Ooh, let's see, demand. We're at a 16. Set my timer. This just repeats. That's what I'm telling it to do. And then I load it, and that's demand NASDAQ. Okay, we go back to the hourly. I love demand zones, supply zones, because it gives you an area to focus on. And then my general rule is whenever we go into demand, I don't short. Whenever we go into supply, I don't go long. It's a filter for myself to just not trade, right? And I'm finding that's the key for myself. I want to find as many things that make me not do a trade. What can keep me from touching that mouse button, right? And make me on the right path to really trade my setup, right? My setup, all right? So that's your hourly charts. All right, let's move on. We're going to go to market profile, volume profile, in my new revamped way of looking at them. Hopefully it's clear. I got some feedback. People are telling me that they're definitely clear, which that makes me happy. Now let me move on here and change my workspace in NinjaTrader. Give me a sec while I do that. Okay, we're going to go right into our ES. All right into our ES. We're going to have single prints here, folks, in a second. All right, let's look at this. And this is our market profile, volume profile here, analysis. Okay, if you're new or you just want some clarification, okay, these lighter shaded areas are overnight activity. So this would be an overnight session. Okay, the black, like this, would be the real-time trading session. That's from your 9:30 to 4:15 every day. Okay, so beauty of market profile, I see a session overnight, real-time, like real-time, overnight, real-time, overnight. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Okay, and if you don't know what market profile is, really quickly, all market profile is right here, right? All it is 30-minute bars. Okay, that's all it is, and then it condenses it. All right. To get a more detailed explanation, let's look at the overnight. Right. This is 30-minute bars. Okay. So it's just 30-minute new bar, 30-minute new bar, 30-minute new bar. It's all a market profile is. They're called TPOs, time price opportunity. Okay. That's all it is. And then when you condense it, it makes a profile here, right? I have a volume profile here with it because TPO is time. Okay, it's based on time. So if you ever hear somebody say this is the TPO POC, point and control, that means that it's the most time spent at that price. Volume profile, this gray one, is volume at price. Time, it's time agnostic. It doesn't matter the time. The time does not matter, right? You can see the volume profile and in the profile is going to match, right? But this just gives me, okay, that's the VPOC. That is the VPOC. The POC, I'm trying to see if the POC's here. The POC, I think the POC and the VPOC are equivalent in this case. Okay. All right, just a real quick primer on that. Now, let's get right into our volume profile. Our composite volume profile, automatically painted here, has excess now. Then we got value, right? Area. And then we got excess to the bottom. Very complete profile. It's a very evenly distributed profile. Now, generally when you see something like this, the market auction is completed. Okay, because everything in life has a bell curve distribution, just like this. Okay, this is one standard deviation, and that's considered value area. And this is actually 68.3%, 68.3%, but we round it to call it 70%. So the value area, right? The value area is 70% of the distribution. It's the meat of the distribution. Then you have tails, right? And then when you turn this vertically, it becomes a profile. So that's all that profile is. And it shows you human behavior. That's why I love it. It shows human behavior. Candlesticks do not show you that at all. It won't show you that. All right. Now, real quickly, let's recap yesterday. Okay, so we have price action from yesterday. Let me put some of these. Let me put some of these in the background here. Send to the back. Send to the back. Okay. Now, opened here, right? Then we were just garbage price action, and then that liquidation break happened. Boom. That liquidation break happened, right? That took away sellers, and we ripped all the way back, pulled back again, where? To the most traded price of the week, and then we pushed up, right? And we closed actually right here. Okay, so that's yesterday. Okay, let's get back to the profile. Okay, now we are gapping up, folks. So what do we got to talk about? This is yesterday's highs in the gap fill, 60.49.50. 60.49.50 is your gap fill. Happens to be also the midpoint of the overnight. That is your 60.48.25 right here. So this area is the 50% retracement of this session. So a fib, 50% fib, right? And you got gap fill. So that's an important level here. And look, you even line up with the demand zone, right? This is what you call single prints. All right. Notice how very, very paper thin this volume is. Okay. That is not great structure, right? This means there won't be much support here. Okay. If there is, that's bullish, but generally you won't have much support. So real quickly, gap rules. All right. Gap rules. What's the gap rules, right? Well, the most bullish, number one most bullish, is a gap and go. Gap and go. Okay. Second most is a failure to fill the gap and then go. That's number two. Number three is that you fill the gap and now you go, right? So most bullish, gap and go. Second most bullish is a failure to fill the gap and go. And the third is the gap fill. Okay, number four is this is how you judge what the market's doing. If the market pulls back and starts going back into yesterday's range, it's just not as strong. Okay, it doesn't mean you can't make a move. It's just telling you, okay, we're just not as strong, right? That's basically how you gauge a gap. Gauge a gap. So gap fill with demand. Okay. Now that we know our levels, let's like see the price action here, so we can really see the price action. There's our price action. Okay. We know we got this big demand zone here. Okay, big demand zone. So let's do this. Let's do this. I honestly, it's a big level. So obviously, immediately, let's do this. I have to put two boxes here. This encompasses the 50% retracement of the overnight and the gap fill. Then we have another box here with this big demand zone, and at the bottom is demand zone. Okay, what this is called in my terminology, the confluence low. Why is it a confluence low? Because this is the most traded price of yesterday, and it lines up with the overnight lows. And it also lines up with last week's highs, which happened to be right here. So this right here is very important. Now, why do I call that a confluence low? Well, this is the most trades of yesterday. I would say probably most of them were long. If we cut through that, what do you think is going to happen? Not going to be good, right? Now, we also have another important level. The most traded price of the week happens to line up with yesterday's lows. So, if you can see here, these are all pretty much points where bulls got to defend. Bulls have to defend. All right. Now, I don't think you guys can see. You can't. I'm gonna have to push this down. That sucks. I want to make sure you guys see everything. Okay, so I'm gonna have to. We got our little zone here. We got our zone here. We have our demand here. And usually I don't do zones like this, but in this case you have to. Okay. Now we do have supply zone right here at 60.86. 60.86. So I'm going to put a little zone right up here. Okay, we know that's our supply. All right. So see the single prints now? These white boxes are telling you emotional buying. Okay, you generally are not supportive. Okay, but if they are, that's bullish. All right, I think I'm ready for scenario. Okay, let's move on. Let's get into the scenarios here. Okay, we're going to start with the bull case. All right. Okay, so prices here, we're gapping up. Not a huge gap, about 12 points. Okay, and then remember, we got our gap fill here in our 50% Fibonacci retracement of the overnight. So what I'd like to see, push up, right? Maybe even tag the overnight high, pull back, fill that gap, and you should get a nice trade here. And I would say to target that 60.86 level, that supply zone. All right, that's a beautiful gap fill pullback to go higher. Okay. Now CPI was better than expected, right? And you have U.S. trying to trade deal. So you have news is a tailwind for the markets. There's really no negative news besides tariffs can go through, but I think that pales in comparison to what the other news that came out. Now, I'm not against if we come back in here and tap this demand zone. I would like it to go down here, okay, but we can just go in here and find buyers and to do the same thing. we can also challenge this 60.21. That's your confluence low. That's your last week's highs. That's your most traded price of yesterday, and you have the overnight lows. That's the confluence. Okay? Come right here, even do a little bear trap here, boop, and you recover. You can also go, I don't know if you go as high, but that could be the move. Okay? Below this area, I don't want to be long. Structurally, that's not good. Okay? Structurally, that's not good. Now, we'll turn to the bear side. Okay? Bear side. Okay. Not the easiest trade right now. Not the easiest. Okay? So, number one, what could happen? Remember, I said yesterday 97% of all real time trading hour sessions hit the overnight highs or lows. Even when they look like they're not going to do it, they usually do it. 97% is a pretty high percentage. So, what I think here, let's say we take out those overnight lows. Okay? We take them out. Now, you could fail here, lower highs, and go back and fill the gap. Remember, inverse of what I just said. Then take some off a gap fill and try to test the confluence low, 60.21. Okay, then you got the most traded. There's a lot of walls here. Okay, the most traded price of the week. That is your 60.13. Okay, then we find ourselves at yesterday's lows and this little balance low here. This is an important level. That level's around 59.91. You break that, you're going to find yourself probably to 59.70. Okay, now, the other alternative here is we can just drive, take out the overnights, go into that 60.86 supply zone. And I want to see what we do in here. I don't long in supply. So if we do some lower high, lower high, lower high, and the profile will be thin here. The thinner the profile, the least participants. And it makes it easier to just clean up all this mess. And you could just find ourselves here. Okay, that's your ES. Let's move on to NASDAQ. All right. Hope everything's making sense. Let's look at NASDAQ. Okay, NASDAQ doesn't really have supply for a while. I like how my NASDAQ charts look now. They look nice and beefy. They don't look like you can't read it. Let's see here. Right there. Okay. Let's look at the NASDAQ here. All right. Price here. Now a smaller gap in the NASDAQ. Gap fill right here. 21992. 21992. That's your gap fill. Okay. Gap fill. Right there. That's a horrible line. Let's do that again. Gap fill. Okay. Profile. Got a balanced profile. That looks like the auction's complete to me. Okay. That looks like the auction is complete. Meaning this could be the move. And we need to bounce off to go higher. Okay. Look, you're taking back these single prints right now in the NASDAQ. Okay. Now, let's look at some key levels here. We'll spread this out. Okay. We'll spread that out. Here's our price action of the overnight, right? 30-minute bars. Now, we also have confluence lows here. Overnight low, 21866. That happens to be your most traded price of yesterday. Okay. Happens to be also the most traded price of the week. So that's our confluence low. Okay. That's your 21850. Write it down. 21850. Very important level in the NASDAQ. Okay, you also have a demand zone here. Okay. I would really like to have longs only here. Go below that, I'm not a fan as much. Okay, I'm not a fan as much. Okay, we do have our overnight highs, and supply is not until 22307. That's the next supply zone. That is not close. Okay, that is not close. I have to think there is some type of poor structure here above us. We're going to look into this in a second just to make sure because that's a pretty far away. I know we just knocked out a supply zone. So, okay. So, I already talked about gap rules before. Okay, we do have this also big support level down here. Let's call it 21740. That's your mini balance lows. Okay, this includes the month and day anchored VWAP right there at 21714. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to go with the bull side first because they're in control. All right. Okay. Now, we all know the gap rules. I would love either you push up a little bit, pull back to the gap fill, hold it, and then you just start continuing to trend. Don't know if that happens. Okay, that's an easy one right there. Pull back to demand, same thing. Go higher. Pretty easy. There's not a supply zone up here. We're going to get into that in a second and really look at that. There must be some, I don't have a gap there, so there must be some poor structure there or something, okay? Now, we can pull deeper back into that confluence low, that 21866, right? Right here. Hold it and also go higher. That's really what I'm interested in, okay? I wouldn't really want to see the market down here. That would mean the market's weak. Don't get me wrong, that could be the trade. That probably wouldn't be a trade I'd want to get into, but it's there. Okay. Now, bear side. Okay. Bear side. Overnight highs right here, 22094. 22094. Now, you can see it's thin here. We almost cleaned all those single prints up. So, like I said, what I would like to see at least take out those overnight highs, get some thin profile, then start doing lower highs, right? And then you can start to take back this move, and that could be just short. That could be it right there. Remember, there's demand zone here, there's gap fill. You can just rip then. But if you don't, and you start to take out these levels, the next one is that 21866. Remember, the overnight low, the most traded price yesterday, and the most traded price of the week. Take that out. Thin volume here. You got single prints here in the NASDAQ. You could definitely test these balance lows. Balance lows, remember I said it, 21720, 21740. So 40 to 20. All right, take out that month to day VWAP. We're going to go lower, okay? Don't know if it's in the cards today. Okay, don't know. Now you can see we're coming off the highs here, so I don't really know what's going to happen, okay? That's one. Right? Now, I have to say, I am not a fan of a short right now. I'd rather be long. Okay, but we have a completed profile, so I have to take that into account. Okay? Okay. That's it for me today. Now we got our plans, folks. All right. We have our plans. Hopefully you enjoyed that, so smash that like button if you did. That would help me out a lot, my channel. I noticed I've been getting some decent subscribers, some decent views. I appreciate it. Please keep coming. Please keep reaching out to me for what content you want. Or if you don't understand something, just leave a comment in the chat or a comment on the actual stream, the feed. Okay, and I'll try to get back to you. And also, if you want even better contact, join my Confluence Trading Discord. Go to my YouTube homepage, join up. Today, I'm not sure if my boy Documents is here. Not sure if he's trading today. But I'd like to be live. I feel like I give a lot of good input on why the market is doing what it's doing. So if you want, come to my Discord and ask many questions as you want. Should be live, okay? All right. Now, that being said, if you're new and you haven't done it yet, please subscribe, set an alert. And I give you the story, the markets. I give you all that jazz. Okay? Let me guide you every morning. Okay? Like I said, the beginning of my feed is all kind of stuff that's just market related. It's not very technical. It's not very technical. Okay. As it goes on, yes, it gets a little more advanced. All right. But we have our trades. We have our trade plan. Okay. Let's follow it. Remember, market opens up, market internals become my best friend, and then I have to determine what I want to do. And I give you that in my Discord, okay? So if I don't see you in my Discord, hope to see you tomorrow morning. All right? Everybody have a great day. Stay green. No trades a trade.